So I think it's important that we know the differences that happen or the things that occur when you go from reptile keeping to reptile breeding. I think that it's really key. And in this video, I'm going to use 7 things, yes, 7, to discuss and just show you and tell you the numbers and all that other stuff. So stick around for this video and find out what I'm talking about. And I got an egg cutting that's incorporated into this as well.
These brothers my guys, know that they fly, know that they ride or die. I keep boys by my side, CJ Ike, now I gotta roll with ice. These brothers my guys, know that they fly, know that they ride or die. I keep boys by my side, CJ Ike, now I gotta roll with ice.
Hey, how's it going, guys? It's Paul with Spheric Reptiles, and man, I am so excited to come to you with this video. And I don't know why I didn't come up with this content for people that are considering breeding ball pythons or just reptiles. This will be centered around ball pythons, but you could apply these same principles to reptiles that you breed, you know, because I think there's a big difference between the two in reptile keeping and reptile breeding. It's just one of those things that occurs, and we want to make sure that everyone knows all the information, because here at Spheric, we're very candid and open with the information that we share, because the thing that I really am aiming to do for you is to just help you to figure out if this is something that you want to do. So, okay, let's get started with this clutch. Let's get started. Go ahead. And this is our 11th clutch of the year. And it was, who was it? It was Laverne, our double head lavender pod. And she was bred with Maximus, who's on the screen right now. And he is a, what is he? A blackhead confusion leopard that is dreamsicle, right? So he's, you know, a lavender albino piebald, and he's got all those other traits, which you already know. You've seen them before in the video. But I'm gonna go ahead and start with this one egg and see what we got. And it looks like, man, that's really cool. It looks like we got a confusion blackhead. And I'm saying that because of the amount of white that's in there. And I see some life in there. I got a sign of life. A confusion blackhead right there from all the white. So I'll go ahead and sit him over here. All right, so I said I was going to talk to you about 7 things. And so here it is, man. The first one is time. Time is our most valuable asset. So like when we die, we don't have any more time. So it's like everything in it's freaking crazy. The way I think is, all right, from that point to now, I have X amount of time. So I want to be able to spend that time wisely. So how much time do you use? Say if you have 10 reptiles, like I'm using this rack system, or I'm gonna show you some bioactives. So you got these 2 systems right here. All right, you got your racks, and then you have your bioactives. How you got 10 reptiles. That's the number that I'm saying a reptile keeper has. A reptile keeper could have 1, but for our examples, I'm gonna use 10, right? Because I think 10 is a whole number, and it kind of sets the limits on reptile keeping. Once you get past 10, I don't know what you're doing. I really don't, but I'm gonna use 10 for now. You let me know if that's a realistic number. But with 10 reptiles, I'm gonna say that you spend a total of 2 hours per week cleaning and feeding, right? So, and then that's not saying that you can't reach in and hold your animals and things like that. And like I said, you can choose a rack system or a bioactive, but 2 hours per week. And so that's cleaning, that's feeding, that's changing water, that's doing all of that stuff. And so I think of all of the time that you have for the week, that's very minimal. And you might spend 3 hours a week. I'm just saying it's a nice even number, 2 hours. So that's a little bit every day, because we still have busy lives. And the reptiles stay happy. And a lot of the reptiles we keep, if we overindulge in the amount of time that we spend with them, then something happens. They either stop feeding, they get stressed out. There's a lot of things that are involved with reptiles because they're just not used to humans. Now, if we were to flip that over to reptile breeding, I'm going to say for 100 reptiles, I'm going to say that you would spend 15 to 16 hours per week. And that's if you're trying to breed them, not just keeping them, but you're actually trying to breed them. So I'm going to say that includes, now it's a long list. Got 100 reptiles, 15 to 16 hours. That's everything from feeding to cleaning to changing out water to pairing them up to breed to waiting on eggs, to, you know, preparing egg boxes, to getting your incubator set up, to ultrasounding those animals. Then when they're laid, then taking those eggs and putting them in the incubator, waiting on them. Then in between time, in the meantime, you're still feeding, you're cleaning. Oh, some of the animals aren't eating well, so you're having to either assist feed hatchlings. You're having to maybe change up feeding habits of an animal that you've purchased from somewhere else. So there's a lot that goes into those 15 to 16 hours. But let me tell you, when you start having the babies, every morning you're going to wake up and have to deal with the hatchlings, right? You're going to have to clean those hatchling racks. You're going to have to check to see, because when they first start out, they don't know how to eat, and their digestive systems aren't fully developed. So it's going to take you taking time to look at each one of these tubs individually to make sure that there isn't anything in there like a partially digested rodent, some liquid feces, some solid feces. But either way, you don't want to leave any of that stuff in there, because inevitably, because they ate meat, worms will come from it. So you'd have to get rid of that. And I mean, I'm just telling you, changing out the water. I just finished going through these racks, and I'm telling you, I just fed them yesterday. But when you put something in, something's got to come out. And it takes time to go through here. And I mean, because these are your babies, right? And so you got to take time to go through here and look at each one of these animals individually. And that's why we choose to name them, because I'm emotionally tied to all of these animals until they find new homes. If they don't find a new home, they got a name already, they got a home with me. So in that, this is just the time that it takes. So it's like 15 to 16 hours if you're breeding reptiles. This is part of what I'm talking about. So when you're reptile keeping, you're not dealing with this issue, right? You're not dealing with laying eggs and hatchlings and cutting them open and making sure they're good and healthy and everything. You're just keeping your animal, you're loving on it, you're enriching it all the time. But when you actually go to breeding, especially with snakes, there's a fine line that you have to play when it comes to enrichment and all this other stuff, because sanitation and keeping things clean become paramount over a lot of other things. And not saying that you don't need to give your snakes exercise. By all means, whenever we do water changes, I make sure that my snakes get exercise. I'm constantly checking on them every day. So I think as for that part, when you go from reptile keeping, maybe you're not checking on your animals every day, but as a reptile breeder, you're really checking on your animals every day. So, all right, so now we got the one egg. And so now we've already discussed some things. So I'm gonna go ahead and cut another egg. And this one looks like it could possibly be a confusion leopard. I'm just going by the pattern for what I see right now. We'll have to see. I can't see the head, so I don't know if it's got black head or anything like that in it, but it looks like it still has some yolk sac to be absorbed. So I'll sit it right here. All right, so the cost per month, number 2, the cost per month. So remember that 10, right? So I'm gonna say that at $2.50 a rodent. Now I know that some places is higher and some places are lower, but at $2.50, if you feed every other week, and I know hatchlings are every 5 days, and some of the other ones are every 21 days, like all of our animals that are in these larger tubs, or every 21 days when it's not breeding season. And now when I'm getting them ready, then it's like every week. And so it works out to, it's $50 per month. So at $50 a month times 12, that's easy. That's $600 a year. If you have 10 reptiles, in particular 10 ball pythons that you're trying to feed, $2.50 rodents every other week, that's $600 a year. Now, that's not that much money. Now, if you compare that to dog food and something like that, I mean, it could be seen as a lot of money, but if you have 10 reptiles, hopefully you're already doing that and you're considering it because you're just keeping. You're not having to buy an ultrasound. You're not having to do this other stuff. Now, if you feed, and these are some big numbers, man. Like, so we have 100 snakes. Just in this small room, we have 100 animals, including hatchlings. We got our males that are in the tubs that I showed you with the 10. 100 snakes on average. And then we have more than 100 actually. I'm just rounding off to 100, saying that if you choose to breed, this is a nice number for you to plan to. So you can say, well, this is my benchmark, $6,000 to $7,200 a year, feeding on the same 2-week rotation. So man, that's a lot of money. So when you go from 600 to 6,000, that extra zero, I'm telling you, see that. So that's something that you really got to consider before you make that jump, because if you can't feed your animals, man, I hate to say this on social media, then what the fuck are you doing? Like, if you can't feed your animals, you kind of know if you can feed your animals or not before you even go into it. So that's my thing, because I have compassion for all of my animals. They're all my babies. So I want to make sure that, if anything, I hate to see a slim snake. You know what I'm talking about? I want my snakes to be, if anything, slightly plump and looking athletic and just good looking. You know what I'm saying? So, and I'm pretty sure that you feel the same way. So that's one of the things to consider. Again, the cost is from 600 if you're just reptile keeping, and then when you go to reptile breeding, then it's $6,000 to $7,200 a year. And that's whether you're feeding frozen, thawed, or live. You know, it's up to you. Now that we've covered the cost per year for feeding, which I know that's something crazy, right? That is super crazy that we would be discussing the cost for feeding. But I'm telling you, that's not, if it's not your number one cost, that'll be your number two cost. So now I'm gonna get straight into this third egg. So let's see what we got. So far, we already got one lavender albino. I don't think it's pied, so that kind of lets me know if the female was het or not. I haven't hit a dreamsicle yet out of the 2 clutches that we bred. And this one looks like a lavender albino. I don't see a pied in it, not yet. It doesn't look like it. It looks like it's just a lavender albino. It doesn't look like it has blackhead or anything else, but I'll have to wait on it to get out to determine whether it's got confusion or anything else like that in it. So we got 3 eggs. We got 2 dreamsicles, and we have one that is, I don't know if that's a leopard confusion or just a leopard. I'd have to wait on them to get out of the egg. Equipment costs, guys. I mean, the equipment cost is real. I'm telling you, whether you get an ultrasound, you get racks, you get bioactive, either way, whether you're keeping or you're not, either way, your housing is going to be, for most people, their biggest cost, right? Outside of feeding their animals, because we all want something that's functional and we all want something that's nice. If we choose to do reptile keeping, we want something that's nice. So when we come home, we can see our animals and we're like, hey, well, I'm doing a great job. Likewise, like I said in the previous segment, if you have your animals in a sterile environment where you can actually control and you can pick up on things and catch things early, hey man, it's still a cost. But now that I've cut those other 3, now let's see what happened with this one bad egg. And I can see that it's definitely bad, and it feels hard, like there's nothing else going on in there. But I always want to cut it open just to see what happened here. And let's see. Yeah, it just never developed. It just never developed. It's really bad smell and everything else. One of the issues that you have with breeding is, you know, we are invested in these animals so much that when this happens, it's heartbreaking. Like, you see this happening in the incubator and you're like, hey, this egg's doing good. And then as it gets closer and closer, it's like, oh, I see that it's not going so good. But you still have to do your job, right? And try to make sure that the other eggs are staying healthy. So that's why I cut it open last, so that I wouldn't spread anything to those other animals. So before I even touch those other eggs, I would definitely sanitize my hands and just make sure that everything is good and giving them, those 3 babies, the best chance at survival that they can have. All right, so let me see. Equipment costs. Equipment costs is so subjective, right? Because some people say they need certain things, some people say they don't. So for equipment costs, I'm not talking about anything but like just all the housing. I'm talking about all of the equipment. So whatever you would need to take care of your animals, it could be tongs, it could be a utility table. It could be racks. It could be tubs. It could be heat strips. It could be thermostats. It could be, whatever, bioactive. But what I'm going to say is that if you have the 10 snakes, I'm going to say that there's a range. So if you keep them in racks, like this right here is a good rack system that you see right here, I'm going to say it's about $1,000 for all of the equipment. That's the rack, the heat tape, the thermostat, all of that. Now, if you choose to go bioactive and you got 10 animals, right? So it depends on the size of the animals, but I'm going to say that's about $2,000. And I mean, that way you can buy in bulk, you can do whatever it takes. But I'm going to say if you're reptile keeping, then you're going to spend about $1,000 to $2,000 per year, which is no chump change. You're already spending $600, so you can add that on. It'll be $1,600 to $2,600 a year that you're spending on your reptiles. Now, you can't get a tax write-off for that, but you have a lot of fun keeping your reptiles because you're not worried about all that other stuff that the breeders are talking about. Like whatever. I'm not thinking about that. That's your thoughts. But if you're considering going into reptile breeding, let me tell you, the numbers are real. They're real. You can expect to spend, realistically, on all of your equipment that you would need for 100 snakes. Now, this number sounds crazy. It sounds crazy even whenever I think about it because you're already spending $6,000 to $7,200 a year on rodents. And then to top that off, you could spend anywhere from $2,500, just being realistic, if you just say, I want to do like what we did. We bought these utility shelves and then I put tubs on them. So the total cost for all of this stuff and the thermostats and everything else, for everything is about $2,500, and so we've already tried to write that off. It's depreciating value and all that other stuff. This is a breeder talk. Or you can get up to like $10,000 to $15,000 on a professional rack system. It's up to you. You can do the same thing with all the equipment, but let me tell you, having these snap-in tubs, that's additional time that you're going to have to use. Whereas if you can just slide this in and out and you want to spend the money up front on that, you can. So you might be wondering, why didn't we do that? I know I ask myself that sometimes. Let's see. Because I wanted to invest in the ultrasound and the incubator first. So I bought a $3,000 ultrasound machine with a foot pedal. So it works out good for me because I'm very comfortable with the animals. Not everybody in your household is going to be comfortable with the animals. And then I bought an incubator that is basically homeostatic, so it kind of heats and cools. It'll hold, I'm guessing like 10 clutches of eggs in a 6-quart tub. So that was what I focused on, is those two costs, which basically is the cost of 2 racks for me, right? That's what we chose to do. But I'm telling you, this is something that you got to consider. So you got to consider that you got to feed your animals first. So that is the number one thing. Remember, you're going to secure that. And then you got to figure all of your equipment costs, some snake hooks. I even say that from if you want paper bedding, if you want cypress mulch, if you want coconut husk, all of that stuff has to be added up. And all of your medications, all of your cleaning supplies, all that, whether you buy them in bulk or not, your reptile spray, your prevenamite spray. All of that stuff adds up. All of your buckets for water, all of your water dishes, all of that stuff has to be figured up. So I'm saying that it'll be anywhere, if you have 100 snakes, now 2,500 is really low, but 10,000 to 15,000 is more realistic. So I just want you guys to know this information before I move on to the next topic, because even though I say all of this, it's all worth it because I love these animals. So I made that choice to go from reptile keeping to reptile breeding. We're getting to the things that drive you crazy. The amount of patience that you should have for 10 animals, I'm going to say it's like a 2 to 3, right? So 2 to 3, with 10 being the most extreme. Like, I can't take it no more. I just don't know what to do. But then 2 is like, hey, man, what's up? This is like drinking an ice cold beer on a hot sunny day. This is, when you're reptile keeping, man, look, you're feeding your animals every other week. You're changing their water dishes like, twice a week. And then you actually, because you're spending 2 hours a week, you take your animals out every now and then, walk around the house, hold them, take pictures, put them on TikTok, put them on Instagram, do all this other stuff, but hey, it's all part of it. Now you flip that over to breeding. You got, just say, remember we got 100 animals. And when I say, I think that the scale for 1 to 10, with 10 being the most extreme, would probably be about a 7. Would you say, Lynn, about a 7? Because patience. I'm gonna start with the eggs. So when they're coming out of the incubator, it's hit or miss. Like, so you did all this planning for all this, you've worked out the probabilities, you're dreaming up the animals that you're gonna get, and you don't get them. You don't get them. In fact, some of the eggs go bad. Now that's heartbreaking and it's crushing. But then, patience-wise, I'm only talking about patience, which is the craziest thing. The patience of the whole issue is that all of these hatchlings, some of them are great and they come out and they eat just fine. They jump right on that mouse hop, bam. They move up to the mice, bam. They move up to the rat pups, bam. Next thing you know, they're growing, they're on weaned rats. But hey, some of them have to be assist fed. And I can show you one that has to be assist fed. Here he is right here. This is little Pacific. Pacific is a beautiful pinstripe yellow belly spot nose clown. He looks like he wants to tag something, but whenever I put something in there, he doesn't want to eat. So every other week, I have to assist feed him until he gets on. Now, my thing is that eventually he will eat, but see, there's a fine line as I put him up, because I still don't want to get bit. Lynn got bit for the first time yesterday and told me after the fight. You know, so I found out this morning that she got bit, but you know, she didn't get bit hard. She just got tagged, which is another thing that you have to deal with hatchlings. But either way, it's great when animals feed, whether they're hatchlings or they're adults. Now, I've had adults, like say this female right here, who's a yellow belly acid, she hasn't eaten in 9 months. I've had to assist feed her once. And just to make sure that she could still keep going, I checked her out, but she's still not trying to eat. And so my next step is, if she doesn't eat within the next 2 weeks, I'm gonna have to take her to the vet, which is just more patience. That's because that's what we're talking about, because I can't figure out what I'm doing. If what's working for all of the other animals is working, then my whole thing is like trying to figure out why it's not working for her. And I've used the Mater's textbook and everything, but when it comes to patience, sometimes you pair up animals and they don't want to lock, whether the female doesn't like the male or the male doesn't like the female. Either way, they don't. And then sometimes when they pair up, she may lay all slugs, or she may have a small clutch, or she may just stop feeding, or he may stop feeding, so the whole breeding project is over. So that's one of the things that you have to deal with when you're actually breeding 100 animals, right? You walk into the room and you just never know what you're going to get. But sometimes even you aren't in the right frame of mind. So that's why I say you got to love this shit, because when it's bad, you got to see them like these are your babies. So you got to really see the fact that, hey, I need to step back. Don't let this get to me. And I need to really try to see what's wrong with this animal. 10 animals, you really don't have anything that happens unexpected. If 1 animal or 2 animals go out feeding, it's okay, because it's basically just saving you money. Like, you probably aren't having big issues with 10 animals. Like, you can control all of their environments a lot better because you have a smaller number. So I'm going to say, on an unexpected occurrence factor, you know, with 10 being just really extreme and 2 being a walk in the park, that's about a 2 to a 3. Now, I'm not saying that you won't have issues. If your animal ever stops eating, that's an issue to you. And so for a lot of people that are keepers, that causes a big worry for them. Like, why is my animal not eating? Why won't my animal eat frozen thawed? The breeder said that it would eat frozen thawed and it only likes live. Or the breeder said that it would eat everything, but it only prefers ASF. So I understand that could be an issue for a keeper. That's also an issue for a breeder. And that might be some of the issues that I'm having, especially with Aphrodite, who's a subadult female. Maybe he was feeding something and I'm trying to figure out exactly what she wants to eat. But it's about a 2, because normally, because whether you keep them in a rack system or a bioactive system, you're going to be able to control those environments again, because it's a smaller number. So your end value is 10. You only got 10 to worry about. But when you have 100, then you got to really be tight on everything. So the unexpectedness. So if you don't keep humidity levels up, you could have respiratory infections everywhere because it's just too dry. Now, if you keep humidity levels up too high, you could have scale rot because the humidity is up too high. That goes along with being too wet, too soggy. If they live in dirty conditions, now you run the risk of one animal getting sick and passing it on to all the other animals. Also, you got to have really good quarantine practices when you have a collection, right? You bring an animal home from a reptile show or you get an animal in. Don't take that animal into your collection because you got to quarantine that animal and check it out and give yourself 30 days to make sure that this animal is not infected with nidovirus or any other disease that would harm and kill your entire collection. There's been people that have lost their entire collections. So when I say unexpectedness, you got to have a game plan on how you're going to approach things before they even happen. So that's the one thing I would say when you're making that transition and you're considering going from keeping reptiles to breeding reptiles, that, man, you got to have these standards of operations, these procedures in place before you ever start keeping, because this stuff will hit you. And when it hits you, then if you don't know what to do, then that stuff can spread like wildfire and decimate your entire collection. Space requirements. So we only live in such big houses, right? So if everybody has a mansion, space is not an issue. But also if you have a mansion, I don't think the money part might be an issue. It might be. I don't think that the feeders would be an issue because you can just buy in bulk. You know what I'm saying? But if you're like most people, you got space restraints. So we got a dining room. So we shove all of our animals in a dining room. We choose to eat there, whether it's on the sofa, in the bedroom, on TV trays, something like that. Because our place is small. And that's one of the issues that Lynn keeps bringing up, is that we need to kick rocks to this place and move on. But hey, space requirements. So I'm gonna say that if you have 10 reptiles, then your space requirements are very small. So, and it depends. Now, like I said, if you go with a rack system, you got a smaller footprint at the base and you're just working on height. So it's very, very economical, even space-wise, for you to house these animals. Now, but if you do bioactive, your bioactive footprint, depending on what type of caging you pick, could actually be larger than those for your racks. So if you choose to do 4x2x2 for all 10 of your animals, whether they need it or not, you just say, I'm gonna do that, then of course you got 4x2x2 for every cage. So this is 4 feet. So you can imagine just 3 of these right here and 3 of those right there, but you got 10 animals. So you're finna take up all of the space that we got for 100 animals for 10. But that's not a bad thing, right? That's not a bad thing. But so this video, remember, is considering going from keeping reptiles to breeding reptiles. And in doing so, sometimes you got to reconsider your spatial configurations. You got to make sure that you can just play with Lego blocks until you get it. You can draw it on paper. You can bust out a measuring tape. You can do all of these things because that's what you'll need to do, so that you're just not using up all of your living space on breeding reptiles. I mean, as crazy as that sounds, you can't use up all of your living space, which we use a lot, right, Lynn?
Yeah, a little.
Yeah, a little bit, right? But at the end of the day, that's what you got to consider, guys. So I'm gonna say it's a 2 for keeping reptiles. But then when you go to breeding reptiles, I'm gonna say it's like a 7 or an 8, because when you go into that room or you get spillover into other rooms, it starts coming on to your life. Now, some people are blessed enough to be able to get a facility. So if you can get a facility, that works. But just starting out, when you first make that transition over, it might take you 5 years or 6 years to get that facility. Not to move to a bigger place, but I'm just talking about a place that's dedicated for your reptiles, so that your footprint is more conducive to breeding reptiles. But you can see that in this room, in our dining room, we have all of our reptiles. Our males are basically right up just outside of the dining room, but they're all kind of right here. The incubator's in our bedroom. So I'm just telling you the truth, guys. That's where we have it. But I would say that this is a 7 or an 8, and 10 being extreme. So, but that's breeding the reptiles. That's what's going to happen, right? You're breeding 100 reptiles. You can expect that the footprint will be a lot larger. And you're getting into this to try to make a project, which I didn't discuss, and you've run the calculator and you kind of know the percentages. And so now you got to pair them up. And then you also got to plan and notice and recognize what it'll look like when that female begins to go in through ovulation, when she stops feeding, when you stop pairing, how often or what should you be feeding your animals as she's growing follicles and he's producing sperm. I mean, it's a whole lot. Then you got hatchlings. You got to plan out where you're going to put them. How will you categorize them? Because if you start mixing them up and putting them anywhere, you can lose or forget or mix up their traits, their genders. There's a whole lot that's involved in that. So you got to come up with a system. Luckily for us, they have systems that are already out there that you can actually purchase and you can subscribe to, so that you can get nice little QR codes so that you can just scan it and be good. But I'm going to tell you that it takes a lot of planning when you have 100 animals, because remember that number that I started out with on feeding, 6,000 to 7,200, that number could explode on you if you're not careful. Your housing could explode on you if you don't buy the right things in the beginning. Say you buy too small of a tub and then you have to go and buy other tubs. That number could explode. And so, man, I covered a lot of information today. I hope that you find this information useful. It's just for you if you're considering breeding ball pythons. And I know a lot of people are considering breeding them. And I'm not saying that you got to get 100 animals. You could actually start with 10 animals, and then that cost will be low. But I use the numbers of 10 and 100 on purpose. That way you have a multiplier and you can actually take one and just cut it down in half, or you can double another one, or you can triple the 10, whatever you got to do. But I'm hoping that this type of content helps you to make that sound decision as you're considering going from keeping reptiles to breeding reptiles. If nothing else, guys, I got to put these hatchling babies that I've just cut their eggs open back in the incubator so they can come out and then they can shed a week later. Just one more thing that we're adding to that you normally wouldn't do if you're keeping reptiles that you do when you breed them. But like I said before, I love this stuff. And what I want you to do, if nothing else, is enjoy that time that you spend with your reptiles. And let me tell you, man, if you got somebody in your life that you love, I want you to go and I want you to hug them, because you just never know. You just never know. And so with that, guys, I will talk to you later, and I thank you so much for watching.
These brothers my guys, know that they fly, know that they ride or die.